I'll grab it. I've never been in there.
Pretty cool.
Can you help me move this better? Here.
Come on over here. Okay, come down there. That'd be easier.
So we get on top. So actually, so I thought you would want to see what we've done here. So like this is Danny sewed, just like the way we did it, where he sewed, I guess, several rows of yarrow, echinacea, and then they've transplanted them and things into or whatever these are, 6-packs.
So how long does it usually take for them to start to germinate?
It generally, the warmer, the more you give them what they want, the quicker it's going to be. Like I have a really nice warm and moist situation in my growing area, and I actually had my basil seeds this last week germinated in like 30 hours. But my peppers, it just depends on the variety, and usually your seed pack will tell you about how many days. Almost all of them, I think they say 7 to 10 days. But you probably could have things like the basil. I'm trying to think of what else germinated. A lot of the greens, like broccoli and things like that, they might just take a few days. Versus peppers, eggplants, those are probably going to take longer. Like parsley takes forever. Parsley takes a couple weeks usually. But I've had it, basically everything's going to germinate faster the warmer it is. So it just depends. If nothing happens, I've given up on parsley before and dumped that soil and then had them come, like walk by and they've come up. But so kind of just depends. But generally 7 to 10 days. So actually what I was gonna water this, but I thought I would. This is actually not as dry as it could have been. So this is seed starting mix, and what they've been using here, I don't know how many bags. They're using a soil mix called Pro Mix, and it has, it's basically what I have, but it's got more, I think it's got some antifungal. I don't think, does Pro Mix have nutrients in it? I don't think it does.
That's not Pro Mix.
Oh, this isn't Pro Mix?
That's Perlane, vermiculite.
Is that the one that Danny has
That's what we mix.
like blood
Okay.
and everything? Or
Blood.
he does.
So
Well,
this
we know
is,
what he does at night.
He's this like crazy concoction.
Does not surprise me.
so basically this is a lightweight mix, that's, soilless mix, and then he's added some nutrients to it.
Like blood meal, bone meal.
That's so light.
I don't think that has the chickeny meal.
Okay. But this is, so whatever, they're transplanting medium, you still want it to be a lightweight mix, but have some nutrients in it. I just use my extra seed starting mix, and then I'll throw in either some compost or worm castings or a granular organic fertilizer. I'm looking what he's got
What's
here.
the most budget?
Compost that you make yourself.
Yeah, but I mean something that you would need quickly, like soon, and you don't.
Well, and if you get it in bulk, so this plant toner is a really good general purpose organic fertilizer. There's this stuff here, right? It's called chickadee doo doo. It's not very
Is that literally what it is?
Yeah, it's
Oh, okay.
I thought
and
you
then-
weren't supposed to use animal waste.
this fish fertilizer. None of these things are that expensive, and you can get them in smaller containers. Like I've gotten a container about this big of this fish fertilizer,
Okay.
and you dilute it. And I've used it for like several years.
Fish.
So it's it's fish, ground up fish basically, dried, and then it's what's
Stacey,
kind
is there
of,
such a thing as putting like too much bone meal, stuff like that?
from bone meal, you don't want to burn your plant. So that's with your transplant mix, just you don't want it to be super, super rich, but you want to give them something. And then the danger is you can burn the foliage or burn the plant. You can kill it by giving it too much fertilizer. So usually what I do if I'm going to use fish emulsion, I'll look in the back and whatever it says in terms of how much to use, I'll usually like cut it in half. So I give them a week amount. That's a good question. So, and this isn't, so we really want to get, oh, it doesn't have any water in it. There. Filled up a bunch of different containers. I was going to get you guys to,
Real full.
yeah. And I've learned that, especially when I'm using completely dry stuff, because a lot of this is the peat, it takes a lot of water, and it seems to help if the water's warm, which I know if you're using your hose that you can't really do that, but it just, it's got a, I don't know, but it's always surprising how much. I don't know if you guys want to help me mix it up. We wanted to get it, so we want to get it not completely waterlogged, but
Wait, you really smell it, right?
probably smelling the fertilizer.
Yeah.
And then, if you guys want to mix it up, I'll get the.
They can help me fill some of this.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Anybody else want to get dirty?
3.
I'll fill those containers up.
That last, if you have just a little more water left now.
So we're going to transplant. There's a few flats at the very end that we're going to transplant. I thought we'd fill, just because of the space in here, we'd fill all of these up and then we go back outside and grab a flat and do the transplanting outside.
It smells exactly like what my dog would like to roll.
If you want to hand me that tray, we can start filling it.
Yeah, you guys want to start doing this up?
Oh, I see it.
Oh, and I meant to bring it, but I forgot it. I always end up running out of containers, and especially when I'm doing a second transplanting for big, these are pretty shallow, but if I'm transplanting like peppers and tomatoes, especially a second time, just, you know, you could go to the grocery store and get like disposable cups, but you could also, they make a little tool, so I got it as a gift from somebody where you basically take, it's a narrow, it's about this big, and you wrap newspaper around it and you make a little pot out of newspaper, but you could also use like a wine bottle. You know, you could just make a little container out of newspaper and I pack them all into a tray. And then, I mean, you'll find yourself, if you really get into this, you'll end up running out of containers and you'll start looking all over the house. So you can make them out of paper as long as they're in a container stuck together. Yeah, so this is good because it's not, you know, water's not squeezing out of it, or it is, but not too much. I mean, it's perfect. Somebody, if people want to, oh, we can. I thought we'd go back outside, so that was really.
Sounds like y'all had a really efficient way of doing this.
When you're doing a lot of them.
Now what?
Is there any more? That's it.
That's
these
it.
are- That's all. Oh, okay. Yeah.
The handout's great.
The white, like your little instructions.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay. I showed up late.
I thought you meant seed packet.
No.
I think it's okay. We can get more if we need them.
Here's your, I'm gonna put it here, since your hands are.
Yeah, thank you.
Let me come around. I thought we break into groups of three per tray, and I just wanted to show you. So one big thing that I never remember to do, I get lazy, and then especially if I'm growing like 10 different types of tomatoes, is remembering the label. But because we're gonna we've got 3 different things here to transplant. We've got a Chinese cabbage, we've got Ford Hook chard, and then I'm not sure what kind Australian yellow lettuce. So we'll do 1 variety per flat. We'll just do as many as we have room for. So, and Danny made these plant labels. He just made them out of cut a milk jug.
So you're trying to get the root and everything, right?
Just to show
Yeah,
you.
try
And
to get
I've
as
used,
much
I
of the
think,
root
almost
as
my
you
flats,
can.
I've just used tape for starting them, but it is
Overfill
helpful
these.
eventually. So and I use popsicles since I get them in bulk. And then it helps if your soil is wet, but not too wet. And then what I do, so Danny's made these. I usually
Do I do 3?
use something, you want to get something that kind of helps you get down in, especially when you're starting a flat.
Oh no, there's 2.
Danny's made these little transplant things out of the corner of a tea jug. And so you just kind of,
He probably puts nothing in his recycle bin or trash can. I mean, he probably puts absolutely nothing in it.
I just want to show you, I mean, these things are kind of fragile, but they can take a lot. And so you just want to reach down and you want to try to get as much of the entire root system of the plant as you can. And then, and you can see it, so the soil is kind of clumping together. So you can see it's got all these fine roots. And then, here, I'll just show you. And then, I just use my finger to make a hole, a space for it, and I just stick it in, and then I tuck it in. And actually what I'll do is I'll go bring another container with some extra soil, because I found I usually need a little bit more to add to it, because I've kind of compressed it. So like I would take, or actually I've got some down. And I kind of
So you should pretty much bury the entire root system up to the leaves.
Yeah, because if you look, so see, I end up
You
just,
don't want to pack
I'm just
it,
using my
right?
finger, but
You want to keep it loose.
I give it a little.
so these were the baby leaves, and see they don't look anything. These are the kind of leaves, and these are the true leaves. And especially if you think this is a cabbage, it's gonna, if you were to plant it down here, it's gonna probably get lanky, and when the wind blows, it's gonna fall over. So it's good to
Gotcha.
plant it deep.
Gotcha.
Let's see, it's the same hole. So I just stick it in.
So it's not necessarily important that when you pull it out of the first tray that you shake it and get nothing but root there. And really you should just kind of be gentle with it.
Yeah, but I've
Just
also
okay.
worked where the soil's drier. I don't know if maybe
This
these-
soil's really warm.
Yeah.
I mean,
Like
you can
greenhouse,
feel the
yeah.
temperature.
The greenhouse was almost 100 degrees this morning.
Sometimes if I don't know if this is a good example, where, see how these kind of were sticking together? If I kind of pull them, if I kind of go like this, I don't know, let me grab a clump.
I feel like if you can keep the soil on them,
I think
It's probably going to be better.
Yeah, it's better to take some of this soil out and have.
Trying to show you an example.
So are we going
Here,
from the same kind of soil to the same kind of soil? In other words, is this the same stuff as that?
It's similar, but it has nutrients added.
Okay, okay. Which is what came out of that bucket that we just did.
Yeah, and I'm not, you said he put bone meal in there.
Fried bone meal and blood meal.
And I usually just take the same stuff and I add compost and
Okay.
or I've got a nice stash
you-
of worm compost that I made.
if-
So I've been using that.
If you don't have worms in your compost, can you still add the compost?
Yeah, so it's the compost that they made. You don't really. I usually try to save my worms.
Because I was like, can you smell a difference? I saw you pick it up and smell it. Can you?
Sometimes
smell?
you can smell like the chickadee.
Okay.
Do.
I'm trying to show you like what sometimes like see how these
Or
are
the
really
fish.
close together.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And sometimes if you were to try to pull up one, they kind of stick together. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll sort of just grab one and
Wow, that's a
kind
big
of
one.
gently unweave them apart.
Yeah, but that still looks very hardy. I mean, it looks
Yeah.
like it's strong. Even though it
Yeah,
looks
as long as it
fragile.
has some roots attached to
Yeah,
it, it'll
pretty-
really.
And then depending on how big a clump stays with it or how if they're really big, sometimes I'll actually not even fill this container at all. And I think there's kind of a picture of it in here where they show you show it kind of tilted. Yeah. So like I'll kind of stick it in there. And that's what I've done that when I'm like planting tomatoes that have gotten bigger. I'll kind of tilt it and
So when you do this,
stick
do
them in
you...
and completely empty, and then I'll sort of, because the roots you don't have to like see how flexible they are. Sort of. Then I just cover them
Yeah, I
up.
was going to just say, do you ever lose any?
So I've done that with a lot of my seedlings. Were really because I waited too long to get the light to them this year because I had trouble with my light setup. So they got really. So I ended up burying them, and I kind of buried them with the root at an angle. As long as I didn't break the root, the stem, they were going to be okay. So,
And they might look sad for a day or two after.
yeah, just
Sad?
Well, they go through shock a little bit. So you haven't killed them if they don't look as vibrant the next day.
right, and water them really well.
Good.
And
The background to it.
if you're doing
I can lay it on my hand if you'd like.
like I wouldn't if you were going to do this outside, I wouldn't do it on a blazing hot day, because you don't want to. What you don't want to do is take a bunch of them out.
Shock them?
Well, like you don't want to do this and then stick them here
Just lay them all over.
and
Why?
then go and answer your phone.
Why? Oh.
Because
They'll be dead.
they're really they're gonna dry out and the wind's gonna affect them. Especially if they're like, well, that one I just killed. If they're just lying there like that. I mean, you wanna keep them, get them back in a moist, safe place.
We have 35 potatoes that we dug up and we were going to retransplant, and they've just been in a pile in a jumble for a month. There's still some green to the leaves. Is there any chance that they'll grow at this point, or are they pretty much compost now?
I mean, if they're showing new sprouts.
Because they're okay.
I mean, if they're starting to rot, they might not.
If they start to rot a little, does that mean they're done? There's no chance.
I would
or-
maybe just cut that part off.
Yeah, I would.
Well, they're tiny.
If
They're
they
really
still have
small.
green, I would
So
try and
here,
plant 'em.
how about you guys can come around here?
Yeah, I've done a couple.
Okay.
Somebody else can jump out in.
Just be sure we keep them.
Yeah, so we want to have all the cabbage in one. So I don't know if somebody here. Let's see.
So you should it's one per container, right?
This is,
That's what it is. Move this maybe.
pretty color.
Yeah, I wonder if you could save us, like, instead of planting this whole thing in the ground, I wonder if you could just slice it and, like, butterfly it, and
I
then you
think
have,
you
like,
could.
both sides.
I've seen people do
Because it's
it.
just.
Yeah, I normally would chunk it and
Yeah.
then plant them,
Is
but
this-
I like your idea of waiting for it to sprout.
This one's still viable.
And I've done them in water. I did some in water as well. Like stuck them in the water thing, and they seem like they did just as well.
Yeah. I put them in, like, a petri dish sort of thing for, like, sprouting.
I've never had to
Salad
work that
seeds.
hard to get them to sprout.
Well, if
Maybe I just forget about them.
I just
they'll,
stick
like,
them in the
sprout,
ground and
but to
forget
get
about them
to
for a few
sprout
weeks.
more.
And then I'm like, oh, I gotta transplant them.
I wonder
So you
how
can
long you've let it cure.
Feel free
Doesn't
to do
it
some if you want.
Oh no, I think I got it.
I feel like
Thank you.
it probably would.
Yeah.
You know, too.
Because that's been
Once you
curing
get-
since
have
that
you
first
bought the
harvest.
house?
That was
Yeah.
one of the first
No,
ones you
I'm
guys
Yeah,
it's
so
not a
it's
short
probably
sale,
ready
and
to.
it's just like the bank is
That's
taking
a
forever,
process.
and
Well, I
they
can.
don't let you know.
We'll definitely
To
help
maturity, that means
later.
the edible stage, like it's done pretty much at 55 days, or does that mean maturity as in to that stage?
Like
I feel like
that.
I feel like I have to
Not too late.
really widen the hole out to get all the roots in. Is that to get all the roots in? I feel like I have to really widen the hole out. Is that
Yeah, I mean,
Anyway.
it doesn't necessarily, like, when you take one out, it doesn't have to be like an exact size. I think sometimes people get really nervous because they're dealing with little
Yeah.
baby seasons, but
See, I'm afraid to just shove the roots in there. You know, I want to kind of dangle them in because if you just shove them in, I always thought they might like do that U shape.
But I drank a lot of
I think as long as you're aware of at which point you put them in here so they don't get root bound later.
Okay.
funny, yeah.
Okay. Not much different than the other then.
Some of them have more roots
Yeah.
than
That's nice. These are, that's fun.
Nice.
I'm fine.
I did.
Yeah.
I tried. I loved it.
Now this one.
Stacey, on the seed packets, I see.
That's
it says
one of
the lettuce.
No,
That's
no,
a
I mean,
cabbage.
is, what I mean is.
Oh yeah, no, it's fine.
Okay.
What does that mean?
It's just got a smaller root system. And some of those might not take, and that's okay too.
Yeah. You want to try?
So yeah, so the question was asked about the seed packets that I'm giving you. I have the days to maturity on there, and that's generally going to be the day. You have to. It depends on the seed company. Usually, it's the time between when the seeds are sown to when you'd be able to harvest that plant. Sometimes it'll be the date between when you transplant it to harvest. So usually if it's going to be transplant to harvest, the seed catalog would discuss that. Like there'd probably be like a general section in the seed catalog.
So on the lettuce you gave us, it says 55 days to maturity.
That's probably, I'm almost certain because lettuce, that actually is more of a leaf lettuce because that's a pretty, there's some lettuces that'll be ready earlier than that. So that's I think that's a, I don't know if it's a kind of a butter, well it's butter, it's like
Right.
a head lettuce.
Right, I know what butter lettuce
so
is,
it's
but
going to take a little bit longer than like a leaf lettuce. Leaf lettuce would probably be like 35 days.
so
yeah,
to
so it's the
eat or
date
to transplant? Is
to eat.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
so that's the date from when you sow the seeds to about when you able to eat it.
Wow, that's pretty short.
And that's probably that's if you want the mature head. I'm sure you
Sure,
could
pull
cut
off
it
the
much
leaves if you
earlier.
wanted to.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Cool.
There's yeah, the church is it called Church Yeah, but every year there's a Churchill Irish Festival.
That's next weekend. That's the 23rd.
Yeah, this is the Shamrock on the block. Shamrock the block.
Next weekend's what? This weekend's all about drinking. Next weekend's about fun.
Yeah.
Still about drinking.
Well, I agree with you.
Yeah, I do love the Irish Festival.
I was gonna say you guys better be careful because they are
sorry,
setting up check.
I'm kind of just forgetting you're there.
7 years ago, Lewis and I went on our first date on St. We went to a party.
I shaved my head at the Irish Festival 3 years ago.
Oh my God.
Fingernail
For
brush.
St. Baldrick's, I raised $2,100 for
right now,
pediatric cancer research.
Wow.
I gave him an 11-inch ponytail.
Oh my God.
I never have it long again, ever.
Never grow it back.
Never. I don't want to grow it long again. I want to shave it. I would be bald again in a heartbeat. People would look at me like I was sick.
I asked a police officer for a jump start at the Irish Festival.
Really? Why did you
Getting too big to stay there.
Why did you?
See if they said they explained it in here.
Oh, and you were.
Not strictly.
No more than anybody else.
Yeah.
Did that subject come up?
No, he just gave me an eye and started my car for me. It turned out my alternator was bad. I was trying to go much further fiasco. So.
Okay.
You know the
So
only time
if you left this like this, would some of them had died because they're too close?
Yeah, they'll. A lot of times, I mean, they'll get like white and rot, and like you're just. They like to have room to grow and to breathe.
I mean, a lot of times you'll see, because lettuce has gotten so popular to eat like baby, people will sow it and leave it like that, and they just, because they're cutting it, it'll come back again, but
Anyway,
So they
You're
clip
gonna
it
get-
and then wait.
and then it'll grow
But if you're
back.
trying to like get these in the ground as like a hardy plant that's going to do well, you're going to.
Where you're going to get a lot of growth and a lot of lettuce. You want to give them the space. In almost every seed packet or your catalog will generally tell you,
go like a block and a half to,
you know, how far they need to be spaced.
and just go 2 miles an hour.
So you just want to pay attention to that when you're doing your final planting
I was like, this
program.
isn't an entrapment.
So like lettuces, I would put like probably 4 inches apart.
You know, that's the thing. When I was taking the Master Gardener course,
I wonder what would happen
they
if I was
said
actually
like
so
18, 36 inches apart.
Well, for tomatoes, for bigger things.
Yeah, but if you're like in an urban setting, like I mean, how do you plant all these so close together?
And some of that is just you're gonna have to experiment with your space and figure out, do I?
Because there's some that I just thought, there's no way I could plant that.
Yeah, but I mean, a pepper plant, like so, if you were putting a pepper plant in a container like this, I definitely wouldn't put but one tomato plant in it. I probably would only put one. I mean,
no, I've grown tomato plants.
Think about it, they get this big and their roots are gonna fill up this whole thing. So you need to give them.
Let me ask you something. Because that's what I've always grown tomato plants in containers. Why are these just so tall? What can I do to make them not so tall?
You could. I mean, I would just pick a variety that. There's two types of tomatoes. There's tomatoes that are all going to be ready at once, and they call them determinate. And most tomato plants are indeterminate, like cherry tomatoes, and they just keep growing. So they're going to get big. So I would pick they have like a patio. Look for ones that are like good patio containers. And those are generally going to be the ones that are all going to ripen at once. Because I mean, they're big on that. They need a lot.
There you go,
They
man.
need a lot of soil.
And then all of a sudden he moves, like, ah!
Like that snowman thing that's on the internet. Have you seen that snowman thing?
Yeah.
What's easier to grow,
Because he was actually
Isabel, what are those shaped tomatoes that are like oval?
Roma?
Yeah.
Yeah, Roma's palms, Italian.
I wouldn't call them shade though, because almost I guess that's the next thing I wanted to talk about was putting these things outside. And I mean, there's very few vegetables that are gonna grow. Pretty much almost every vegetable that you're gonna want to eat needs like 6 or more hours of light.
The way I always try to think about it, and I think it's good for beginners, is that if you're picking something off of it, it needs a lot of sun.
Yeah.
And if you're eating like the head of lettuce, like if you're not picking the fruit off of it, it needs a little bit less sun.
Yeah, I mean lettuces.
And if it goes under the ground.
Yeah. Well then.
Lettuces are generally, and also most lettuces are cool weather plants. They're not going to like it when it gets hot. There are some varieties that'll say they're more heat resistant than others, but so like you could grow lettuce in an area with a little bit more shade, and then you'd probably be able to grow it a little bit longer than if you're growing out in the full sun. But pretty much most, like tomatoes, peppers, eggplants.
Basically all your makeshift.
Someone told me eggplant's really hard to grow in Richmond.
We have really bad pest issues. They use it as a trap crop.
Yeah.
Like you can plant eggplant to attract pests, and then once they're all on your eggplant, you cut it down and burn it or do whatever you want to do, and then that's a way to get rid of them. But yeah, we get flea beetles. They're like little black beetles that look like fleas. Yeah.
But when your plants are ready to go in the ground, you don't want to just plant them out in the ground on a hot day. You don't want to take them from right inside to right outside, because that's going to be very
Too
shocking.
much of a shock?
Yeah, so the term that's used for toughening them up basically is called hardening off. And so that's the technique you're gently acclimating them to getting ready to put them in the garden. And so what you can do is might be good to do it on a weekend, depending on what your work schedule is like when you're going to be home. Maybe the first couple days, put them in a sheltered area where it's not going to get too windy. They're going to get some shade for the first couple days, like for just a few hours.
So you would keep them in the container?
Yeah, keep them in your container so you're not planting them out in the ground. Put them outside in a sheltered, shady, not too windy place for a few hours, and then lengthen the time. And then after about a week or so, then go ahead and plant them outside. And the best day to plant them, if you can look at the weather, is an overcast, like misty
Like this.
day. Is the
Like
great
today.
Yeah, like this would be a great day, especially later in the season, to plant. Or if you're planting like late in the afternoon and you know it's going to be a gentle rain the next day. But if that's not in the forecast, you could take a basket, or like a bushel basket or a laundry basket or something that's got where sun can get in but it's also shady, and put that over it I think I already mentioned I made a little tunnel and put burlap over it. I've even seen people where they use like umbrellas. Like if your schedule, you can only plant that day and it's gonna be blazing hot the next day, I would give them some shade so that they can, for a few days.
What about hardening? Do you have to harden them off temperature-wise? Like maybe like.
Yeah, so I wouldn't take them out of, they're coming from a nice warm place to where the temperature is gonna get hot in the day and then it's gonna get colder at night. So they need to acclimate to that too. And so that's what I'll do. Sometimes the day or a few days before I actually put them in the ground, I'll leave them out on the back deck. But you just don't want to do that if it's going to get really cold at night because they won't be in the soil.
It'll be too much shock, yeah.
Right. So definitely, because you could really kill your plants by just sticking them out there on a blazing hot day.
Is there any plants that when you're seeding that you don't plant next to each other?
There are, I'm trying to think, there's all sorts of, I've got a book that's like carrots love tomatoes. I mean, generally basil.
Yeah, I found kale likes garlic.
Yeah, a lot of stuff likes garlic, probably because I think garlic has that, some pests don't like it, it's too strong, it's too alkaline. I've read that peas don't like onions, and that may be true because I tried to sow peas next to my onions and they didn't do very well, but I don't know. There's a lot of books on garden companions. Like another pretty good one, companion planting is basil with tomatoes, nasturtiums, and we're gonna actually be teaching a class on insects, like attracting beneficial insects to your garden.
What was the book that you just said?
Carrots love tomatoes. But if
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that I wasn't gonna say.
Lettuces, I know they like the cooler temperatures, so if we were to start what you have now, we would obviously eat it before August when, it's going to be like 100 degrees. But could you do another cold weather crop, like after the heat of the summer?
Yeah,
of lettuces?
You could definitely, like I gave you guys a chart, I haven't talked about it yet, but on the last page, and so I've got lettuce. So I've got, you could start sowing lettuce in early February.
Okay.
You could set them out in mid-March. You could sow them directly outside early March, and then you could do another sowing in mid-August.
Something I've never done.
Yeah.
And then the other question to that is, my lettuces are done. It's, April. Now it's time to maybe put my tomatoes in the ground.
Right.
Can they go in the same soil, in the same area that the lettuces were in?
Yeah. Generally, the rule of thumb is you don't want to put the same thing in the soil again. You might not want to put lettuce in that same spot again the next season, or the next time you're sowing lettuce.
But there's no particular plants that would not be beneficial, or that would.
No, but there are ones that can be more helpful.
Yeah, there's.
Okay.
So how do you know that?
You just kind of look at it.
Well, generally you want to replace a light feeder, something that's, because if you've amended that soil in the garden and you put in something that's not going to be as heavy a feeder of the nutrients, then you put a heavy feeder in after that, and then you might put in this is getting more complicated, but like a cover crop that, like say legumes, like bean plants, they fix nitrogen from the air and put it in the soil. So if you sowed like some red clover afterwards, or
Lupine.
I'm trying to think. I used Austrian winter pea because it's winter tolerant, and then it also is good because it'll grow in the winter, and then in early spring it really kicks up. And then I'll cut the tops, and then I leave the roots in the system, and that provides nitrogen for my next crop. So and I think we're going to teach a class on garden planning and talk about rotations.
So if you're planting something like blueberries, which take a couple of years to mature and become a blueberry plant, is there something that you can plant along with it every year to enhance the fact to make more blueberries?
Yeah, I mean, blueberries is a shrub, so you don't want to do a lot around that blueberry with those roots. You don't want to destroy their roots because they don't have a very deep root system. But you could, there's a big debate about if grass, I mean, the good thing with the grass, a lawn, is you can kind of mow it as long as you're not going up against the roots. And then you're keeping, you could sow, mulch to present.
I
But
think we put pine needles around it. I think they like it more acidic.
Yeah, and
Pine is acidic.
but you're talking about it growing another plant along with it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put anything right at, like within a foot of that blueberry plant.
Because at NRC, that's what they told me too, is you never want to plant the same plant where you planted.
Right, but blueberry plant, you're not going to move it probably.
Ever? Would you ever move it?
I mean, if you're moving and want to take it with you, but it's
No,
gonna.
but that's all right to leave. And
Yeah, so that's a
what about strawberries?
Strawberries come back.
yeah.
So you
So
don't,
those are perennials.
you don't replant that every year.
I mean,
You don't replant blueberries either.
right. So blueberries and I'm trying to think of other shrubs, blackberries.
Raspberries.
Right. Yeah, those
All
are
bramble
gonna
vines,
all
they're all brambles.
come back every year, and they're a woody species, so they die down and they grow back every year, and they even leave their tops. So you,
So if you're looking to get
if they're
more of a yield,
treat them like
you
a
need to
tree
fertilize.
or like a shrub in your garden.
I
like
gotcha.
a
I
holly
gotcha.
bush,
I
where you're
gotcha.
gonna.
That's
um,
nice because they're low maintenance. Like
Yeah.
you don't really have to mess around with them. But
Yeah.
buying perennial plants is more expensive than buying annuals, especially if you're starting from seed.
Whereas these are gonna die. These are annuals, and they're gonna die as soon as it.
But in the
loses.
long run, I mean, if you can pay $16 or whatever for a blueberry bush, but you're gonna have it for 10, 15 years, then sure.
I put
Yeah, because I wanted to plan it so, like, I would have yield like in the beginning of summer, then plant something else in place at the end of summer, and then there's even stuff that still plants that blooms in the
so-
fall.
So like a good rotation would be like what I've done is I've garlic. So you would sow garlic and some types of onions in the fall, like say mid-October, and then that garlic's not gonna be ready for me to harvest until mid to late June, and then I could put something else in there. I could put it's getting late in the summer, but if I could already have started. See, by then it's going to be really hard to find tomato seedlings at the store. I could have started some tomatoes 8 weeks before that indoors, or even outdoors at that point because it's warm enough. And then I could put that tomato plant in the ground where that garlic grew, or I could sow some beans. So you need to think about what, like you wouldn't want to sow lettuce after you pulled that garlic because it's going to be mid-July. That lettuce isn't probably not gonna germinate because it's too hot. So you would plant something
That's conducive to that temperature.
So there's a whole, and it's really fun to plan that out, and especially where we don't have that much space. We don't have the luxury probably of having.
Yeah, see, I don't have that much space.
Yeah.
And that's really important with like garlic and onions and things that are going to be in the ground for a long time. Just to pay attention to how long it is from seed to harvest, because you don't want to take up your entire back lawn in garlic and then you're like, oh, now I have no room to plant anything else because it's been in the ground for so long. So.
And like tomatoes, there's a lot of people I know who are like, there's this contest to get the first tomato of the year. But for me, because I have a spring garden, if I started my tomatoes in January and they would be ready to be planted before it's warm enough. And yeah, I could they have all these special things you could buy called wall of water. I could probably keep that tomato alive in the ground, but I don't have room for the tomato because I've got too much lettuce and cabbage and broccoli. So knowing that I'm gonna not be ready to put my tomatoes in the ground until maybe even the beginning of June, I could start my tomatoes later. So that's the other really good thing when you start your own seeds. You don't have to rely on.
Yeah, and this year,
Only
or
that narrow
last
window.
year, I planted tomatoes, and I was still getting tomatoes in September.
Yeah, if they don't get diseased, you could have them till frost. I remember one year we didn't have a frost until the day before Christmas, and I picked cherry tomatoes on Christmas Eve.
Stacey, one thing I'm interested in growing that I've never grown before, I moved, and in relation to your blueberry tree, first of all, I planted a fig tree in 2004. $8 at Maymont's Herbs Galore in 2004. The side of my house totally protected, now 30 foot in circumference, arched up against my house. And we've moved, and I can't take it with me. One I would like to know is there any way I could transplant part of it, graft it, but I want to know about how to do that.
Figs are pretty. I will make sure I get your email address because I took and I'm hoping we teach. Maybe next year we'll teach a class like that. I took a class on propagating woody species, and
I'd love that.
so it's a big deal, especially for like people who grow apples.
Right.
You graft them. So you can
Can
graft
you graft
figs.
a plant that had already been grafted?
Yeah, figs. I think
Because I bought it and the
I
guy told
think-
me it was grafted.
I'll have to look. I had made a special note. I know because I've got a fig plant over at the community garden that's got too many. Generally, with the fig, you don't want to have too many main
Right.
trunks. Is the word?
Branches.
And so there was like a few little ones that I was going to try, and I think that you would treat them like a root cutting, where you cut it and you try to root
and
it.
I actually
Try
did
to
that,
just
took
root
it
it.
home, and I put it in the vermiculite, and it
Man,
got
I
a
would
root.
have dug that
and it-
thing up and took it with me.
Not as big as that thing is. I don't think so.
Probably cost like $1,000.
Unfortunately, it's a rental property now, so I've put it into the lease that's still the landlord's tree, and she can come and harvest the figs anytime she wants.
that's nice.
But the other thing is that I really want to try for the first time asparagus, because now we're removed, and I know it's going to take a while, but now I saw on your notes that's a below ground. So tell me, is that a seed?
I think you can. My niece, I didn't know you could grow asparagus from seed, but she
I
bought.
heard asparagus was really easy to grow.
Yeah, what you well normally I don't know about seeds, but you normally buy a big clump of that
Like the bulbs or
of
the
the
root
bulbs,
system.
yeah, and it comes with like some mulch in the bag, and you're supposed to dig a really deep hole, isn't it? Right?
Yeah, so you dig usually I think they plant a trench. Have you grown? I have never yet because I haven't had the space yet, but I'm gonna plant them.
I am dying to grow asparagus.
So
this
they
year.
take, the main thing is you need to get the root system really good. So I think like you dig a big deep trench, and so I think with asparagus you want to look at the instructions because I think you want to make sure you get the crown, or you want to get the depth planting right. And then you've got to you're not supposed to eat any of the asparagus. You grew asparagus.
Right, yeah,
You
we're
want to
We're
tell.
the third year this year.
Oh,
And that's the
You're
first
not
time that you
supposed
can
to
actually eat
So
it.
you have to
Put it
wait.
back.
I knew you'd have to wait a while. I
Like
knew
a
that.
system,
For the
I
first
guess
2
it
years
is
and on the
before you
third
start
year.
harvesting.
Yeah.
So ours should be ready this
So
year.
you have to wait like a
Like
couple of
3
years.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's enough left.
So Tom,
God.
did you buy yours?
Yeah, it was the roots and the crown.
Where did
Yeah.
you get that?
I saw him at
Burpee,
Southern
I
States
think.
yesterday.
Southern
I saw
States.
him-
Like,
Here's the thing: if you go to like a place like Southern States, they have right about now. You want to go there, but they get bought up so fast.
Yeah.
They're-
You can mail order.
yeah, I think Burpee is where I got.
Well,
Yeah.
you can start them from seed,
Yeah,
but
it
and I
takes-
know that because it wasn't your garden; it was another garden.
Yeah.
I guess the birds took some of the seeds,
Yeah.
and now I have like a little area with asparagus.
Oh,
I
do
mean,
you really? I didn't realize
I think this is the third year, but I mean it's only like this big,
Yeah.
but it's so cute. I had to leave it.
What happens if
Asparagus actually
So if
grows
you-
wild around here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
Go
can
and
see
just
it,
dig in.
especially like on the edges of wetlands.
Yeah, we had
eat it
we sent a
earlier?
ton by
Or
our
No,
mailbox.
it
just
and we
hurts
just
the
dug
plant?
it all up.
Yeah, it just
put
might
in a
not
trench.
be.
And
I
then we
guess
mixed
I guess
that
you're
like half
taking
and
enough
half
of
with
its
some store bought stuff.
There's some really interesting books on
because when it's growing, that's when it's collecting all the nutrients from the roots, and so I guess it might just not get
I
enough
didn't know?
strength.
I didn't know it took that long.
Yeah, so that's the thing is, I've never grown it because I've always lived in windows,
Yeah.
and then I haven't had a big enough yard. But I finally have a big enough yard. Once I get my other vegetable gardens, I'm gonna make some of my area an asparagus bed. And then, because asparagus is nice because you can, then it gets bushy, it looks like it, and then you don't really have to do too much to it. Asparagus is pretty low maintenance.
You cut it back every year.
Yeah.
Did you put it on a protected side of the house or in the
No,
yard?
not really,
or
no,
is it
that's
bright
right out.
sun, no sun?
Right son.
Bright sun. Okay.
So they
Really?
won't grow well in the shade.
I don't know.
I think
I
His
they're-
are
mine is
bright
definitely
sun.
in Brook.
I
I
think
mean,
they're
Well, obviously they will in
Above
the bright
ground.
sun. because
it
you
looks
said you
like it.
didn't
I
want-
mean, the foliage looks like a regular asparagus fern, is what it looks like, and it grows 3-4 feet tall.
Wow.
Yeah, and then you cut it down at the end of the season. And
I know I
it's-
have to cut it down, but that would kill me to cut
It's
it down.
it's starting to come back now. My wife said it's coming up about this big right now. So,
Nice.
yeah.
The beginning of a meal is what you're
Yes,
saying.
exactly.
So how many years have you had it?
This is the third year.
So
That's
the
when you
third
can
year
first
is when
eat
you
it.
can eat it.
So you're gonna be able to eat it this year.
I'm hoping. Yep. Even if it's one meal or half a meal.
Yeah.
An appetizer, you'll be happy.
That's right, exactly.
That's awesome. Well, great.
And if you've seen the white asparagus at stores,
Yeah.
basically it isn't a different variety.
Definitely.
They're just basically it's called blanching, and they're putting leaves or mulch
Keeps them from
on
getting
top.
green.
Yeah, so they can't photosynthesize, so they're not white fancy.
My mom taught me if you leave a bell pepper on the side, it turns red.
They have purple asparagus too.
Yeah, that's so good.
Nice.
There's a lot of purple asparagus in Florida.
So
Did not know that.
I wanted to just talk about. I think we talked about it already, but there's some things because you probably have limited space indoors, so you want to be selective with what you sow indoors versus outdoors. And so things that aren't like beans, corn, things that are going to do perfectly fine sown in the ground and that need that warm weather. If you don't have, I would just prioritize what you sow indoors versus outdoors. And some things like the root plants, carrots, radishes, beets, parsnips, they don't generally. You're going to have better success if you just sow them in the ground.
If you're planting a garden for, like, my husband and I would only want like 3 or 4 plants of the variety, right?
Yeah, I mean, you don't. That's the thing is, so
Because-
maybe you only sow. And the only thing is when you're sowing your seeds, they might not all come up. So that's usually where I get in trouble. Is I sow a bunch because they don't come up, but then you can give your extra ones to friends. Yeah. But things like that you probably, if you want to sow indoors, would be things that take a long time, like eggplants and peppers take a long time. And then, like if you want to have cabbage or broccoli in the spring, really, so you need to, that's where you need to plan ahead, and they need to start them earlier than you would, say, your tomatoes.
So it's probably too late right now for broccoli.
Yeah, let's see, if I really wanted broccoli right now, I probably wouldn't start them from seed. I would just go buy some
Buy the plant?
I'm trying to.
But if I wanted to say have it next year, maybe start them in November, December.
No, they need.
So if you
I've
bought
got-
them now, though, would you keep the plant inside?
It's just not gonna. I mean, unless you have a greenhouse, you're not gonna be able to give it enough light inside.
And you're not going to want one broccoli plant. You're going to
Yeah.
want to have like a few of them. So it
Well,
would
if
be
you
rude
have
of
the
you to just
light
go ahead
for
and
the
buy it.
germinating, couldn't you use that light for the broccoli?
You're gonna have to give it a big pot. I mean, you were talking a lot more major
Oh, I
operation
see
to
what
grow
you're
it.
saying.
So I've got that. You probably wouldn't want to
I wanna grow
sow
everything.
broccoli indoors until really at the beginning of March. You could do, I mean, especially if you're going to put it in a shady area. Like last year I grew broccoli till July because it was growing underneath my fig. It seemed to really like that shade.
Ooh, underneath the fig.
Yeah. But like I said, it's also for things that you could buy at the store. Sowing them from seed gives you a lot more flexibility and options. And that's why I brought all these seed catalogs. I put a list of some really good seed catalogs because I think a lot more and more people they kind of want to know where their plants are coming from, and Southern Exposure has a lot of heirloom varieties, and that really just means
They're the same as they were 50 years ago.
yeah, like old time varieties, and also so there's open hybrid varieties, like are varieties that if you were to save the seeds from a hybrid and try to sow that plant, there's very little chance that that seed is going to be the same as the plant that you saved it from.
Because it'll be different. There'll be a mix of alleles, and whatever you get is kind of like a roll of dice.
So if we did want to preserve seeds, let's say we have an heirloom tomato plant, and we want to preserve some of the seeds, perhaps germinate next year. How do you go about taking care of those seeds?
Yeah, so if it's an heirloom, I think heirloom is the same basically as open pollinated.
Yeah. Well, heirlooms, the varieties are like Southern Exposure. They pick varieties that grow well for this area.
Okay.
So you know that most of what's being planted from that catalog is going to grow well in this region.
And that when you save the seed, when you grow it from seed again, you'll get that plant. You won't get like pansies. I mean, a lot of flowers, annuals, you had a purple pansy and you save those seeds. If you plant it, it's a good chance it's going to come up orange.
Like if you have a hybrid tomato and it's a 2 heirloom tomato plants that you've hybrid, and then you save that seed, chances are when you plant that seed, it'll only be one of those
I
tomatoes.
got you. But I want to get a little bit more technical. What do I do to the seed to preserve it for next year?
It depends on the plant. Like
Oh, it does. Okay.
the easiest ones to save are like cilantro. That's all that is just I let it go to seed and I cut it off and stuck it in a bag and forgot about it until
Like
So
a
it dried
plastic
up,
bag
you
or
clean
a
it off
paper
or
bag?
wash
The
it?
tomatoes
Yeah,
you can
either.
just put in like a plate until they rot. Or
Okay.
you don't want to like
Usually that's
get them
what I
super rotted, but
So, okay.
until they have that gelatinous
I got you.
surrounding, and then that's gonna dry up a little bit, and then you just like fleck the seeds out of there and
Yeah.
save it.
And
Cucumbers
then it's
are
like
the same way.
dry.
Melons.
Yeah.
Did you say
Cool dry,
tomato?
definitely
Very
like
tight.
airtight.
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 Some people keep them in their refrigerator.
Dark too, right? Thanks.
Bean seeds are really easy because you could just let that bean dry on the vine, and sometimes because sometimes if you let it dry too much, you'll get moldy. So I'll take it maybe when it's starting to dry and stick it somewhere.
You can buy things. I mean, if you want to get super fancy with it, you can buy like like those little trays. They sell them at Southern Exposure, and you put the seed into it, and it does that for you. Like it leaches everything
Oh,
out,
wow.
and like you've got the seed. I'm gonna show you.
Well, I have a great walk-in basement.
I'm
so
not
it
sure
would
what
be
you're talking
perfect.
Peppers are really great for saving. Like how have you ever grown peppers or bought peppers? Oh, silica cell for drying. Okay.
Can you overuse a seed?
You can only use a seed.
So
Yeah, but then you would take the seed from that plant.
yeah. So
I mean,
you're
does it
kind
ever
of doing
get-
a little of your.
Does it ever get to the point where, okay, I have to buy a new seed?
No, but the reverse would happen if you didn't use it enough. Like if you were trying to start a seed that was 3 years old, a lot of times you don't have a good germination rate.
Yeah, like seeds. So I put a little section here. Seeds, if you want to store them, you want to keep them in a cool, dark place. I mean, because if you put
I
them in
have that.
with moisture, they might start to germinate. So you could freeze them. You can put them in the fridge. I usually don't bother because I don't have enough. I keep them in like a shoebox that I have organized. But Southern Exposure, this catalog, all these seed companies, they have walk-in freezers that they keep them in. But just a cool, dark place like a closet. But the longer you have that seed packet, the less chance that they get old, they shrivel up, they might not germinate. And so what I do, if I have older seeds I'm not sure about, I just sow them really thick. But you could also do a germination test where you take, and I put a link in here, where you basically take a percentage of the seeds you have, like you take 10, and then you put it in like a wet paper towel in a Ziploc bag and put it kind of somewhere warm, and then when those seeds germinate, count them up, and if you have 6 out of 10, your germination rate is 60%. So you have a 60% chance that your seeds are gonna
What's a
germinate.
good rate?
Um,
What would you say? Consider like a good batch of seeds.
I think they usually are like in the 90s.
When you're buying them commercially.
Usually the
Yeah,
commercial
if it's the
seed
first
packet
year.
will
I
say
think
it.
60 is great if you've been saving your seeds.
Yeah, and
see.
some
that means
some
you did a
seeds
good job.
Yeah.
keep much better than others.
Commercial, there's rules, like they have, the Department of Agriculture has rules for a certain, for them to sell, for someone to sell you seeds, they have to have a certain germination rate. And sometimes they'll have it on the package. But this one doesn't. It might be in the catalog. But it's usually like 90% or better. But then I found there's some seeds, some seeds will last a lot longer. I have cabbage and arugula seeds from like 7 years and they still come up. Lettuce, I think, parsley, spinach seeds, usually I try to start with fresh spinach seeds every year. So 1 to 3 years, 3 years is generally the kind of the rule of thumb for most things. After that, depending on, you might not want to waste all this time to sow seeds that are really old, but you don't have to throw your seeds away every year.
Maybe the ones you're not sure about, you could just broadcast those. You don't spend a lot of time on.
Yeah, just sow them sow them all, and then some of them are gonna come up.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure I cover everything. So pretty much for sowing directly outdoors, it's kind of the same thing. You want to have, you don't need to have, you can use your garden soil, but you want it to be you don't want it to be really hard. You want to loosen up the soil. And then you want to make sure you have some nutrients in there, some compost. But I wanted to show you, so you could do the same techniques, sow in furrows, broadcast, and I've got some different drawings here. And just wanted to talk about, I think most people, especially out in the more rural areas, you see gardens where they're in these long rows. But that's so that it's easy, you can walk down the path, everything's really easy. But if you don't have that much space, you can really, this is a good example of really intensively plant things. And
That's called a square foot gardening, I guess? Or?
that's kind of one of the methods where you're planting things tighter than what they say in the seed catalogs. But you're also maybe paying attention to some things that might benefit. So
Yeah, that's what I'm
like a
gonna be
good
doing.
thing you could do is you could plant cabbage at the spacing they recommend for the cabbage, and then sow lettuce seeds around it. That cabbage is going to take longer to grow than the lettuce. You could be harvesting that lettuce. By the time that lettuce is pooped out, your cabbages are nice. And so that's just a good example of.
How do you know what to do, when to do that though? Because some of the distances.
Some of that's just problem solving that you're not gonna
No,
get to the
unless
brunt
you
of that
do it.
unless you do it.
Yeah. So,
Because some of the distances were so long, I'm like, I'm never going to be able to grow this.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just experimenting.
That's just
Sometimes
it,
you'll
yeah.
plant way too many tomato plants and then you won't know what
I
to
mean,
do
I
with them.
still pack my tomato plants in, and then making use of things that can climb. That gives you more space. So like
Yeah.
squash.
Because I got a side yard that's all I
Yeah.
want to do is like blackberries and blueberries and.
Well, and then maybe you plant some low-growing things near them that would benefit from the shade, like some lettuce, but not right up against the root, but like a few feet away.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So yeah, just experiment. Kind of, you can push the rules, but just remember, I mean,
But
there's
also
a limit.
be conscious of like what you're taking out of the soil. You're gonna need to refeed that
The
soil
more
again
stuff
with
you have in there.
compost or a cover crop or something that's gonna replenish. Because if you have a ton of stuff growing on a small piece of land, you're just taking all of those nutrients off of it.
So you.
But a good
So you always have to feed the soil in order to feed the plant.
Yeah, that's critical. So you think of like there's only a set amount of nutrients, sort of like energy, and it's being exchanged. It's never really being like created, it's just being exchanged. So if you have a kale plant that is like all of that energy and nutrients that were in the soil is being sucked up into that plant. So when you harvest it, there's nothing left to replenish it. So you can either let that kale plant die and like refeed it that way, or you could plant a cover crop that is going to fix the nitrogen back into the soil or compost it.
Gotcha.
So you're just always cycling nutrients through.
And what I usually do is when I'm transplanting my transplant, or when I'm planting it in the ground, and then the term for that is setting out. Generally, I think I don't know what I put it in here. You hard it off, and then you set it out. Yeah. Or sometimes you'll see in catalogs they'll have the date. I think they have a date in here, so they've changed it, but you'll see a TP or transplant date. That's generally the date for when to put that transplant outside. But usually when I'll say I'm planting that lettuce plant, or say I'm planting this, I would take my garden fork or whatever, and I'd have already prepared the soil around it, but I dig a little hole and I put it, and I usually almost always throw something else in there. If I have some like chickadee doo-doo or a granular organic fertilizer, put a little in that, and I usually err on the side. I put it usually a little bit less because I'm always worried I'm going to burn the plants too much, or compost or my worm casting. So I always give each little hole a little, and then I cover that up a little, and then I plant my plant. Yeah. So I'm giving back whenever I'm planting, unless I've put a cover crop in there that I know is added a lot of nitrogen. It might not need nitrogen, but it still might need phosphorus and potassium and all the other things.
And when would you put a cover crop in the ground? For the winter. When? Well, most people don't put it in winter, right? For
In the winter, but like a good cover crop that doesn't necessarily add nutrients though, but kind of keeps the weeds out of it. Like buckwheat would be a summer one.
And it's great for as an insectary. Like it'll bring a ton of pollinators.
Yeah. Because buckwheat, I think, will go to flower. You can sow it in like 30 days. You'll have
Yeah,
flowers.
it's super fast. If you have anything that's open at any point in the summer and you have a month between plantings, plant buckwheat.
How do you know what seeds you can plant in this area?
Go to Southern, or get seeds from Southern Exposure because they only are
Yeah.
selling things that are. I've got a catalog. They'll only sell seeds that are for this region.
Yeah, so if yours just complete, I mean, they're gonna have like, so usually when I'm trying to pick a variety, if there's 3 that look really good, but this will say this is like the best pepper for the Mid-Atlantic, for the South Central Virginia. I'm like,
So
that's
all
what I
the
get.
seeds that are at Elmwoods are for Richmond.
Not for Richmond, for the region.
Yeah, and that's a good thing. Like
Well,
so,
There's different zones.
so
Yeah, I don't understand that.
there's just going to be some varieties that are going to do better because our climate here is like humid. So we have humidity and the heat, and there's a lot of things that will do well in the heat but won't do well in the humidity.
Yeah, because
So-
some of my tomato plants actually burned because I think they got too hot.
Yeah, I mean, so that's why this would be Southern Exposure is where I think almost all of the plants we grow from them. But like Fedco,
We do some from Fedco.
okay, Fedco's. I brought all these, and you guys, I have some labeled extra if you guys want to take them. Fedco is a catalog in Maine, and their catalog's great, but there's a good chance that some of the stuff they're gonna have is gonna be better for Maine than here.
I just wanted to show you that it'll say, it'll say USDA zones 5 through 9.
Yeah,
So you
so-
just find what zone you're in, and it should, at the front of pretty much every catalog, it'll have,
Yeah, I forgot to. I'm glad
Show
you brought
me
that because
that.
we're zone.
Because I've read that several
We're
times.
zone 7. I think they might have made a 7B with the climate change, but we're generally going to be zone 7 versus like if you go to Roanoke, they're like a zone 6, and so that's the.
I'm trying to
Yeah,
look for
I've been looking.
You can Google.
You can
Yeah.
Google, yeah. And also keep in mind, like, microclimates, like if you have,
Yeah, if you're in the valley.
yeah, if you're planting everything in a valley, it's gonna be a little bit cooler raised than
Looking
Do
for-
they consider also soil
Yeah.
types? Because, for instance, soil around here is more acidic than in the valley. The valley's more basic.
I don't
Well,
think
with
that,
Richmond
I
being
don't
built
think
on
that
hills
factors
and the
into
mines.
Oh, okay.
But you would want to get a soil test done
Yeah.
before you plant anything.
Right.
Sure.
How long does it take to get a soil test?
However long the Master Garden program.
There are kits where you can do your own soil tests. You can get.
And I almost brought.
The
you
county
can go
extension
to-
office will come do it for you too, but I think they take longer.
Yeah, you can just like, you take your soil test,
And
go
you
to
mail it.
extension, and they'll mail it for you. And
Or you can mail it directly to Virginia Tech.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
yeah, they'll do it.
I
And
think
there's a
it's-
guy named Mark Schoenbeck, who does soil counseling, sort of. Because a lot of times, yeah, you'll like get your
My soil needs a therapist for
Needs
sure.
a therapist, yeah. Wrong choice, word choice, but so you'll get your soil test back and be like, I don't know what any of this means. And so he'll go through the
Right.
soil test with you and tell you what amendments you need to make to the soil and just how to help the soil grow in that sense.
Yeah, because my soil,
Because it can be kind of daunting getting backward. Like,
my soil hasn't. I don't
We
think
lived in the house we just moved
whoever
out of
lived
for
there has
10
ever
years,
grown
and
anything.
in the first 2 years, it was a
And
little
like I
crappy
dug
garden.
it, and
But
it's like
finally, with
really,
composting,
really
it's working.
hard.
Yeah, so we get a lot.
I mean, it's almost like
Middle
cement.
5 to 6 year range. I have the
Which is
nicest
why I
garden.
thought about doing raised beds
Yeah.
because,
Built on
And then
that.
you have to mess with the soil.
yeah.
And then a lot of clay and everything. So it was difficult
The
to
thing
get
about the
garden
raised
where we
beds
wanted
that
it.
I
Now we
like
don't
is
live
I
there
feel like I
anymore,
have
so
more
I'm starting from
control.
scratch this year.
yeah,
Grass
This is
is
why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's good. I like the idea of having someone that sees a bigger picture. I mean, when you're getting a soil test done, you're taking a minute amount from. I mean, the soil is changing throughout. So
Sure.
maybe you got like a chunk of
Bad
something of
soil.
limestone in there, and that's gonna
Right.
throw off
Certainly.
your whole test result. So it helps to have someone on the phone with you that's like, okay, well, what does the rest of your garden look like? Explain your soil type, and then making a more cohesive idea of how to treat your soil. That's interesting.
So, when Lauren brought up the zone, basically that comes into play because, so we're like zone 7 or zone 7B, depending on what they've decided we are, but we're generally going to have our our last frost in the spring, like April 15th to 20th, and our first frost October 15th to 20th. And so that, in terms of when to start seeds or when to transplant, they'll say, like eggplants, you want to start 8 to 10 weeks before you set them out. So you knowing that if you're going to set eggplants out on May 1st, then you can just go look at a calendar and you count back, and that's when you would want to start them indoors. And then you do the reverse for when you want to start things in the fall, because you want to either it's going to be before the last frost or before the first frost of the fall. And the only thing is in the fall, because the days are getting shorter, it's getting cooler, things take a little bit longer, so you want to add in like about a week or two on top of that to let them. But once you and so that's how I made this chart, and I just took a variety of charts and what our frost-free date is, and worked my way backwards
I like
or
that
forwards.
chart.
Yes.
This is exactly what I've been looking for.
It's a rule of thumb. Like I've got March 11th. I mean, you don't have to start on March 11th. You can start on March.
Like
Within a yeah. So.
I usually put my garden in at Mother's Day. That's actually my Mother's Day present to myself.
Yeah.
Be out in my garden the whole day.
And the other thing is, like, we probably should have. So I'm gonna go move these to the greenhouse because look, they're already.
I've noticed these too down here. They seem to be a little.
So this, we should not have done this. We should have watered them.
Yeah, you water them right. I kept trying to remember to say that. We need to water them really.
So I'm gonna take, if people want to, we'll take them in and we'll water them and they'll be sheltered. Because if we left them out the whole day, they're probably might not make it.
Do you like this one beside this, Stacey? Right here. I think there's one more coming too.
I'm gonna
Slide this back, perhaps. Yes.
pour this in here.
Would you like this to go kind of push the other one back a little bit, or do you have an area that you want?
Is there some?
Maybe over here too, right behind your hiney.
Yeah. So I'm gonna use this to water inside this because I think that might be too hard.
Oh.
I don't want to do that. They'll probably be okay. Oh, that's why I brought my watering can to show you. I have it has a really gentle.
Mm-hmm. Little like rain shower sort of thing.
Yeah. It's 2, so no, it's not 2, it's 3. I haven't figured out how to change my watch.
I had my Saturn for 5 years before I figured out how to change the clock in it.
This one?
That one right there.
But that was the one.
That was what we transplanted.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no problem. So, did you get your seeds?